Good evening, everyone. We are going to start because we want to respect everyone's time, and we are speaking about support groups, but we're going to get different perspectives this evening. Sister Peggy Mtswane, I'll introduce her more later. She's going to speak on what she did with support groups. She's a social worker. And then we're going to have Dr. Colleen Saunders, who's going to share from a very practical perspective as someone who has attended and supported someone who has been in support groups. And before we start, I'm just going to ask Madeleine if she can open for us in prayer. And also, Madeleine, before you pray, can you tell us why you want to start support groups at Harties, please?
Well, I do feel that there's a need, for something like that. And the encouragement came from a young guy in our church that he's addicted. Well, he was addicted to drugs and things, and he didn't get any support in our community as SDAs. He had to go to a total different place in Durban. There was a rehab center there, that he went to, and he actually did, get help there, and he is now off drugs. And the whole issue for me is there's nowhere for anybody that's an SDA to go to an SDA establishment where they can actually get help.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is why I thought, let's start a support group, because that's at least the first step towards helping people in our church.
And also it helps for the family members as well. If the addict doesn't want to go, it helps for the family members. But thank you so much. And then there are all kinds of support groups that can be started. It doesn't just have to be for people that have addictions or that are affected by it. There are so many different support groups, and it's just to provide us with more information. And it's good to start. A support group can be 3-4 people. It doesn't have to be, because there are huge trust issues, it seems. People are very reluctant to start support groups in churches. And at this time, it is so needed because people are really battling, and they are battling on their own. And we feel better when we hear ourselves saying things when someone else is going through a similar experience, because then you realize that you're not alone. Just last week, I spoke to someone who's going through a hectic time, and afterwards she said to me, I feel so much better because I heard myself saying things that was in my mind all the time. And so thanks, Madeleine. Madeleine, can you open for us in prayer, please?
Yeah. Dear Lord, thank you so much for all that you do for us, and that you inspire us to start these support groups, and all the support that we're getting to start all these groups. And we want to ask your blessing on it, Lord, because we cannot do it on our own, and we don't want to do it for ourselves, but we want to do it for your children. So please help us and give us the knowledge and the know-how and how to do it all successfully in all the churches where these groups are starting. We ask this, dear Lord, in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Madeleine. So our first speaker is going to be Sister Peggy Mtswane. She's a social worker, and she's going to share with us. And after that, we're going to have Dr. Colleen Saunders speak to us on support groups from a very practical experience, personal experience, and then we're going to have questions and answers for people who may have questions. Now, Peggy is a social worker who did a master's in counseling psychology. So her professional experience is in substance abuse and addiction therapy, employee wellness practitioner, correctional offender counselor, mental health therapist, career and placement services manager, and also she is an employee selection and induction specialist, psychiatric and medical hospital social worker, child welfare social worker. So Sister Peggy comes with a lot of experience in this field. And actually, I met Sister Peggy years ago when I phoned Elam to get information on addictions for someone who needed to have someone admitted. So Sister Peggy, welcome. Thank you. And I'm going to hand over to you. And welcome everyone. Once again, thank you for taking the time to join or connect this evening. You are really going to benefit from it. We can only learn from one another on this journey. Thanks so much, Sister Peggy. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sister Connie. And thank you to everybody who's here, who've given me the opportunity to talk to you about this extremely, very important subject. In the first instance, I think Connie's mentioned that support groups can be started for about anything. Yes, even literature supports that. We can have support groups for any area of human concern. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about is what they are briefly, and give some examples of support groups and fears of joining a support group. I think this is important because you might find reluctance from people who may benefit from them, but who fear joining them. And then talk at length about benefits of joining a support group. Okay, a support group is a structured gathering of people with a common problem, and it's actually for people with a similar difficult circumstances. So it can be transient circumstances, it can be a chronic condition as well, just like we all know with other chronic conditions. And then these people gather for a sole purpose of giving each other emotional and moral support.
Don't tell me my Wi-Fi stopped.
Sister Peggy? Hello? Hello? Okay, it seems like we've just lost Peggy. Let's just see. Okay, let's just see if we can get her in again. Just going to, I've sent a message already. I don't know, Dr. Saunders, do you think we can go over to you since we can see you beautifully and hear you?
Thank you.
I don't know.
Yes.
I'll just see what happened to Peggy now.
Yeah.
So we're going to hand over to Dr. Saunders while I try and get hold of Peggy. So Dr. Saunders graduated as a medical doctor in 1991. She's a public health practitioner. She worked in community health clinics for about 15 years, and she's currently working at one of our big academic hospitals, Helen Joseph. She works at Polyclinic, and she worked in both management, and she's currently a full-time clinician, so she's one of the senior doctors there. So over to you, Dr. Saunders, while I try and get Peggy to come in when you are done. Thank you so much for being so willing to share with us. Thanks. And you look beautiful.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you for the opportunity. And oh, thank you so much. I think it's just the light. It's just good light. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity of speaking to you. It's really a humble privilege for me. And good afternoon, everyone. I was just listening to part of what Peggy's saying about support groups, and I think my chat on what I have to share is really going to tie in very practically in terms of what she said. And what I started off with actually was that, there's many different kinds of support groups. It doesn't necessarily mean that because you engage a support group that you have a deficiency of any sort. As human beings, we social beings, and I think God made us to seek each other's company and each other's support in various situations. Even the Bible teaches us that we should not neglect the gathering of ourselves together, and I believe that it's not only in a formal way in church. It could be in small cell groups, which could function as a support group. It could be, in prayer meeting services. It could even be on Zoom meeting services like this particular one. And so, my experience or my engagement with support groups goes back a very long time. And I know that I'm speaking to, many Adventists and many church-going people. And a lot of the groups that we go to, we don't really see it as support groups, but they do function as support groups in a way, following the definition of a short group, support group. Like, for instance, in church, the Bible teaches that sin is a common problem. We have all sinned and come short of the glory of God. And where do we go to engage God and to get salvation from, and to learn the teachings of the Bible? We go to church. And so my experience, if I think back in my life with support groups, started at a very early age, and I didn't even realize that I was engaging a support group. For example, as early as going to church and getting involved in lesson study groups. There you get to know the Bible. You have a lesson quarterly. You study that lesson, a common lesson throughout the week, and you learn about God, and you learn the lessons of kindness and helpfulness and cheerfulness, and how to trust God, and how not to bully other kids. And then I grew, and I went to Pathfinders, and then Pathfinders I found myself in a huge collective support group, which was subdivided into little units, girls units and boys units and age groups units, and these units function socially on a Sunday, where we learn to march and do knotting and go camping, and then on a Sabbath we would get together, into our little class groups, and learn about the Bible, and have activities that we have to do to graduate. And those for me were all support groups. And as I grew, and as life got to me and things like that, subconsciously I think I was already engaged and socialized into the benefits of support groups. And so at school, then I found myself engaged in support groups, especially when we were studying for exams. When it got to matric, we had little study groups, we used to go to in the week and learn together and prepare for exams. That for me was a support group. And we got to know each other, and we encouraged each other, and we shared, our little maths problems and our science problems and our biology problems. And we held each other accountable in terms of, did you do your homework? Did you do your test work? Did you prepare for your tests and things like that? Did you do your assignments? And so, throughout my life, I was involved in a number of support groups. And then when I got to university, I was already socialized, as I said, into support groups. And when we got together as friends, we said, hey, but we're struggling with this. How are we going to get through the bulk of this work? And to me, our motto at university was, if you can't say it, then you don't know it. So which means if you cannot carry a concept across to someone else in words, then you don't know it. So that is how at university, at medical school, both during my undergrad and my postgraduate work and studying, I again engaged in support groups where I was having the benefit of reaping the benefits of being involved in a support group. And then, you know, I graduated and I started working, and then inadvertently, and now I'm, you know, being in a support group is making yourself vulnerable. And so now my vulnerability started. I realized that I had married someone with a substance dependency problem, and the problem became huge. It escalated into. It first started with emotional and psychological abuse, and it escalated into physical abuse, you know, and I was devastated because this person wasn't the person that I thought would be. And I just felt so lonely, and I felt so isolated, and I felt guilt, and I felt shame, and I felt that I couldn't speak to anybody in church. What would they think of me? What would my family think of me? And then eventually I sat down and I said to him, "You've got a problem." You know, we always see the problem in someone else and we don't see the problem in us. And I said to him, "You've got a problem. You need to go to AA. You need support." And being a doctor, I diagnosed him and I said, "That is what your problem is. And you need to go to AA." And he went, and I saw the help that he received from AA. And but the problem didn't go away because I also had to work on me. And I then eventually decided that I'm going to Al Anon. So, as you all know, Al Anon is the support group for the family of the person with the alcohol dependency. And I went to a couple of Al Anon meetings, and it was very short lived because after only a few meetings that I attended, I just decided that I do not want this relationship anymore. My father wasn't like this. My brothers weren't like this. They're not treating their wives in this way. You know, I don't have to live with this. I have a choice. I was not born with this person on my hip, and that's okay. You know, it is okay when you decide that you do not want this kind of a life. And I was But what happened to me there was that I was led out of a state of limbo into a state of definitive decision, because when I sat down and I realized how these people were struggling with their loved ones, I decided that I do not want this life for myself. And that for me was the beginning of a progress into a decision of eventually getting myself out of this relationship. And for many years thereafter, I had and this is hard for me to talk about. It's not easy to make myself this vulnerable. So I hope you would excuse me if I get a little bit emotional. But when I left that relationship damaged, very damaged. I was very angry. I was very hurt. I was mortified. My self-esteem was gone. And sadly, you know, like Peggy said, this brother said to her, I had no one to turn to in church, because I realized that our church leaders, and with all due respect, you know, our pastors and our elders, do not have the training to deal with people who have deep set emotional wounds and hurt feelings. They'll say they pray for you, but they don't get involved in your life. They don't step into that deep, dark hole where you are to try and get you out. And that was a need that I had that couldn't be fulfilled in my church. And sadly, um, and then eventually, you know, my sister came to me one day and she opened up about one of her loved ones who she was struggling with, who had a problem. And I didn't want to look into his coffin one day and not know that I had done nothing to try and help him, because that is an extremely painful experience. And I said to my sister, you know what? We can do this together. And I suggested to her that we go to Tough Love. And Tough Love, as you know, is it's a secular group. They are a religious, and they were a very well-known group. But this was my first influential experience that I had with a support group, because initially I attended this support group with all my baggage that I hadn't dealt with from my past destructive relationship, to fix my loved one and to help my sister fix her loved one, you know. And but this experience, as I went to Tough Love and listened to everybody's experiences, and we would go there and we would speak our hearts, and we would, you know, share and engage with each other, I realized my need to change. I realized that I had deep-seated hurt and issues that I had never dealt with. And it also helped me to recognize my own deficiencies and my own contributions to enabling destructive behaviors of the loved ones that I wanted to help. Because, you know, in our own ignorance, very often in trying to help, we enable people in their destructive behaviors, destroying themselves and their loved ones and their families, meaning well, but not having the tools to set proper boundaries and to guard those boundaries, and to help them see and help them drive them to their own rock bottom so that they can realize they have a problem. And it was during this time that I recognized in myself a codependent, and why I constantly found myself involved in dysfunctional relationships with people who engaged in dysfunctional behaviors. Because as a codependent, I had a need, a constant need to be needed. And that was destroying me, because I was constantly giving in the wrong way and I wasn't working on myself. So I realized my own need to change before I could even begin to facilitate behavioral change in my loved ones that I wanted to help and assist. And this was an extremely sobering experience, because it's so easy to look at others and realize and tell them that they need help. But to put the mirror in front of you and to look within and to realize that you are the one who needs to change first, it's very difficult, and it's very hard to look within yourself and see your own need to change. So I realized that also, to achieve growth, I need to work on myself constantly. And attending a support group allowed me to remain accountable to my own support group. Because what happens was, at the end of every weekly meeting, you set what we call a bottom line, which is small growth steps set by yourself, for yourself, regularly. And it doesn't have to be a big step, just a small step, baby steps to help you grow. And your support group will hold you accountable at your next meeting for that step that you have set yourself. Because you see, these were people who have walked your road. They know your path, they know where you are, and they know how to help you and to climb into that deep dark hole with you and to get you out, because they know the way out. So they will hold you accountable to whatever growth steps or bottom lines you've set for yourself regularly. And also to realize that during this process of my own personal growth and development, I was able to contribute to the growth and development of some, with not all. You know, as a codependent, you want to save the world, and you need to realize that you can't save the world. It's one person at a time. And so to contribute to the growth and development of someone within the group and others that you come into contact with outside of the group, you can share your own experiences. You can say, this is what a support group did for me. This is what reaching out and making myself vulnerable helped me to grow to be. And especially within my practice, where I see patients and I recognize where I was within them. And so I can support them and I can help them because I've been there. I can climb into that deep dark hole with them and I can help them out. And so, you know, for me, the beauty of a support group is confidentiality. And I learned this very far long ago, as I said, during AA open meetings, because I used to go with my loved one to AA open meetings and also the Al-Anon meetings, is how big and important the aspect of confidentiality is. AA uses the slogan, what you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, let it remain here. And I think that is what makes a lot of people feel so vulnerable, is because they cannot trust and they do not have that reassurance of confidentiality when they open up and make themselves vulnerable. And that is a human need. Confidentiality is a human need. So a strong support group will provide that sense of confidentiality. Another beauty of a support group that I learned was that you identify with others who have walked your road, as I've constantly said, and know your journey. And so you can feel safe enough to become and make yourself vulnerable. And even if you just sit there for the first few meetings and you listen and you take in these common experiences without saying anything, you just sit there and you listen. And I almost think of it as a butterfly who has gone from the larva stage into the pupa stage, who's now cocooned in that hard shell, and inside is that developing butterfly. While you're sitting there, change is happening, and that metamorphosis of growth and development is taking place until you are ready to open up and to reveal yourself and to share and to expose what is within your heart and within your psyche. And that's the beauty of it, when you open up and you share with others and they can look inside and they can help you heal the hurt and the pain and the destruction that has been happening inside. So I've also learned that with going to support groups, that the experience of growth and development remains with you for the rest of your life. Like even now, I don't go to support groups that often, that much any longer. But should I feel the need to, I would understand what the engagement is all about. And during my experiences with AA and Al-Anon, I've also learned the 12 steps to recovery. And you know, I've engaged and I've become I've looked for resources, Adventist resources that help me grow and that will help me cope. And I would like to share some of those resources with you. The one thing the couple of books that I have here is my very own personal Bible. And this is the Woman Thou Art Loosed edition of T.D. Jakes. I've never come across a man that can understand a woman's heart as this man can. And then my sister also introduced me to this Bible. And the editor of this Bible is Stephen Otterman, and it is the Life Recovery Bible. And this Bible is based on the 12 steps of recovery. And then also, one beautiful book by E.G. White is this 12 Steps to Recovery. And I'm sure you recognize this book, Connie. You gave me a couple of editions that I share with my patients all the time. It is this 12 Steps to Christ edition, based on the 12 Steps of Recovery. And I'm still reading this book. It's right here by my bedside on my pillow. And I read through it all the time. And also, I also still refer to the Tough Love manual that I bought when I went to Tough Love groups. There's so much of good that you can learn from the secular group and apply it in a Christian way. So my experience with support groups has helped me grow, and I'm still growing through it. And when I go through difficult times, I still apply the lessons that I've learned in my support groups, and I can share and hopefully be a blessing to others as well. And I think that's the end of my story, Connie.
Thank you so much, Colleen. I'm sure a lot of you could relate. And thank you for not being afraid to make yourself vulnerable. That's the big fear I think most of us have. We don't want to make ourselves vulnerable. I don't know why as human beings we fear that so much. And I guess trust is an issue as well. But within support groups, there are agreements that you make. There are things that you sign. As Dr. Colleen Saunders so rightfully said, whatever happens in a support group remains in a support group. I had the opportunity of attending a support group years ago, in fact, when we did psychiatric nursing. It was kind of to protect us from all the stuff that we were exposed to. That helped a lot. And then also, as many of you know, my daughter's got cystic fibrosis, so I attended a support group when she was a baby, because you don't know what to do. You don't know if you're coming or going. And it's so nice when other people who have walked the journey ahead of you can help you and just tell you to calm down. It's not the end of the world. You're going to be okay. You guys are going to do fine. Now, I can say that to other people, because many times, the doctor's rooms will phone and there's a new cystic fibrosis patient. Are you willing to speak to the parents? They're not coping. And, then I can do to them what has been done to me. And it really helps. As Dr. Saunders said, it's important to recognize when we need help, and none of us are perfect. We just have to embrace our humanity, but at the same time, we have to do something about the challenges that we recognize within ourselves, within our relationships, within our family members, so that we don't have to stay where we are at. So, Dr. Saunders, thank you so much for sharing openly and for making yourself vulnerable. And the book that you showed, the Steps to Christ Recovery edition, we managed to get more of those books. They're very effective for people that are in drug rehabs. We've got 2 drug rehabs that are using it at the moment. So please keep your questions and answers until the end. Then we're going to allow Dr. Saunders and Sister Peggy to answer the questions that you have. And Sister Peggy, are you okay? Can I hand over to you now? To those of you who missed the introduction of Sister Peggy Nswane, she's a social worker. She's got a master's in counseling, and she worked at Elam for many years, which is a drug rehab, and she's going to share more with us on support groups. Thanks so much, Sister Peggy. Over to you.
Thank you, Sister Connie. Yeah, I will resume where I ended. I'm sorry about the technical glitch that happened. Yeah, I was talking about fear of joining a support group. Some people really feared because it's a personality thing. They may be having shyness or social phobias and so on. They need extra help. But the main thing that commonly is found for people not to join them is that they have stigma of having of join. There is a stigma of having a problem if you join a group. And so the answer to that is, who doesn't have a problem? We all have problems, and we all qualify for any groups that are available from time to time. And then there's also fear because people don't want to be seen because it's seen as a sign of weakness. This might happen especially with males who don't want to really be seen as vulnerable, as weak. So attending a support group might be a problem for them. But ironically, because with addictions, they are more common among males, we find more males in addiction support groups. So, and some people fear because they have a fear of confiding in strangers. And Dr. Saunders alluded to that there is that thing, the trust thing. It's difficult to make yourself vulnerable and so on. But of course, like the analogy she made about a butterfly, that's how it starts. You can just sit there and observe and listen, and then you grow from there. And there could be time and distance constraints when people are not joining a support group. Maybe it's far, maybe the time doesn't allow them. But guess what? Employers are required by law to help people, you know, in terms of the Health and Safety Act. They are required by law to be supportive to their employers, as long as to their employees, as long as employees can prove, have a piece of paper that shows that they were in a support group. And also support groups usually take about 1 hour of a person's time per week. So, and that's something that people need to remember, is that people at a support group had similar fears before, but they took a plunge and tried them out anyway. So I'll go on to the benefits of attending a support group. There are many, and some of them Dr. Saunders have already mentioned as experienced by her. First of all, if a person is from treatment, for addiction treatment, for instance, or any treatment for chronic ailments, assuming this is the first diagnosis and so on, and first treatment, of course, people need to understand that post-treatment journey is difficult. And a support group offers the company of peers that a person needs. Peers who've been there and done that. You need somebody who can hold your hand and walk with you. And support groups therefore help a person cope emotionally with life without the substance, if it's an addiction problem, or if it's a grief support group. They help the person face life without their loved ones. So they help you really take those small steps, having to start over again and navigate your way through life without something that you were used to. And the support groups also helps a person to embrace sobriety, if it's a sober one, or recovery, because recovery in a support group is modeled by others. So role modeling, we learn a lot from observing, from the visionary images that we see from others. We learn much more than what we hear people say. And it's also an opportunity to talk openly about your concerns. Let's say, for instance, a person's concerns are very personal, like they want to, talk about their relationships at home. This is one place that they can really discuss and talk about. This is a neutral environment, and it's a type of environment that nobody judges you. Other benefits, of course, it helps a person maintain recovery. members encourage you and comfort one another, and they help you cope with the condition and its consequences. Remember, any condition has got dire consequences for a person's life. It can affect their finances, affect their relationships at home, affect how their friendships, their self-confidence, and so on. So it's very important that they have a support group to help them cope with those consequences. And sometimes you don't have anybody else to really talk to, but you always are assured of an ear that will listen to you at a support group. And it offers a safe place to share emotions without being judged, because everybody who's there has a common concern, so they really cannot judge you. It's a non-judgmental environment. And coupled with the fact that it's confidential, as a structured group, there are rules. Nobody talks about what happened there stays there. It has been mentioned already. And then one other important thing is that in a support group, you feel less alone. Imagine if you have just been diagnosed with a condition. Let me just think of addiction, because that's what I know most. That's in my recent memory. You've just been diagnosed with with alcoholism, especially where it is real. Mere using alcohol is taboo. You really can feel very lonely. So a support group makes you feel less alone. And because here you share common problems and common solutions. And not only that, you actually see you are in the company of people who are also respectable, and you realize that I'm not the only one. Other people who are like exactly like me are in the same situation. And the group's common goal is usually positive change. That's the main group. Let's change. Let's grow every time. And what's important in that is that there is group cohesiveness. They want this change for you as well. They don't want the change for individuals. It's a group thing. Therefore, a group instills hope for members and gives them reassurance, directly or indirectly. Sometimes you find that if are we still fine? I'm not kicked out.
No, we can hear you, Sister Peggy. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So you find that, for instance, you get assurances for people who are older, or people who've been with this condition longer than you, and that's really reassuring. And it also alleviates the shame and guilt of any condition. Dr. Colleen Saunders mentioned the shame and guilt. That's a very important thing, and it doesn't disappear just easily. Now, imagine a person who's not part of a support group. How do they deal with the shame and the guilt? It's possible, therefore, that it can stay with them for a very, very long time. It also gives a feeling of belonging, being understood and being validated. Validating a person is saying, I understand why you would do that. I understand how it made you feel. You are validated, and validation in a family when it comes to addiction is not easy. Family can be supportive, but they cannot completely understand why you're doing the things you do and how are you doing them the way you do them. So this validation you might not get at home, but you will definitely get in a support group. And a support group, it sounds very serious because it's structured and there are rules and so on, but I tell you, it's also enjoyable and fulfilling. There are moments of light talk, moments of sharing a joke, and all of these, the combination of everything that constitutes a support group makes the members look forward to the next group and the next and the next. And because it also prevents a relapse. Remember, we know that addiction, for instance, is a chronic disease. So a person is relapse prone. So there is always the possibility of relapsing to an addiction, any addiction, whether it's gambling, whether it's sex, it's pornography, whether it's alcohol or anything. Even shopping, by the way, people can relapse to that. So being there is helping you prevent a relapse because it's a reminder of why you are in the group in the first place. And it offers members alternative and or new healthy lifestyles. It's a cheap or free opportunity for personal growth and healing. Remember, a person cannot always be readmitted. Every time they relapse, they become readmitted or admitted in a treatment center. Treatment is costly in the first place. Secondly, the treatment centers themselves recommend support groups. I've done that sometimes with some of my clients where I find that, you know what, we're treating this person, they relapse, they're coming back every year. So I suggested, you know what, you need a support group, and I referred them to that support group. And other benefits of joining a support group is that a support group is relaxing and comfortable. You feel that whenever you are with others who are similar to you, there's companionship that develops, and this in itself, the friendships that are developed, they alleviate the lonely journey of recovery. Recovery can be quite a lonely and a long journey. And by the way, when I say it's a long journey, that is why we're saying in recovery, we're working the recovery one day at a time. Now, if you work in the recovery one day at a time, that's now 6 days. And then the 7th day, you are going back to the group. That really helps a person focus and not lose hope. And during group sessions, support group sessions, individuals feel a catharsis, that emotional release, that pent up conflicting emotions that are always present, especially with newly recovering people, the guilt, the shame, and so on. You know, you're releasing them as you listening to other people, and as you talk to other people, and as you receive in turn empathy and sympathy from others who understand you like no one else can understand you, who's never been in this journey. And basically you are easily understood in a support group. It also helps reframe the problem and makes it less intimidating. You know, when a person talks about they are an alcoholic or a drug addict, it scares people around them, but they themselves are also scared. That is why it's so easy for people to be in denial, in different stages of a denial. Even after treatment, they may still be in denial because they're dealing with a major problem, a problem that is seen by society as major and intimidating. But when you're in group, the group reframes it for you. And it also, therefore, helps you own your substance problem. As a result, you find it easy for a person to just stand up and say, my name is so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a drug addict, because that has been reframed and it has been made less intimidating. And this also was modeled by others who have been in the group. Some people stay in the group. This is a thought I lost. I wanted to mention that because addiction is a chronic disease. So people need to be in a support group for a long time. And in fact, sometimes they need to be in a support group for as long as they are feeling triggered. And that can be a lifetime, a whole adult lifetime. That's why in AA groups, for instance, or any alcohol groups, you find people of varying ages and who tell you that they've been in a group maybe for 20 years, 25 years, 16 years, and so on, because they've seen the benefit, the medicinal benefit of being in a support group. It's helped them become sober for that long. Now, another common factor in a group and a benefit is that you can relate to what is shared. Nothing surprises you. The same with you. You can talk to people who can relate. Some of your experiences you might not want to share with your family because they won't understand you, or your other friends, but you know for a fact that when you are in a group situation, a support group, you will be understood. It also improves focus and motivation. I've already mentioned it in one way or another. In short, it gives you positive peer pressure, just like a person who's using or who's abusing substances was given negative peer pressure. This is now positive peer pressure, and it works. One learns new social skills. One social skill that people take for granted, people don't know that it's a skill, is to ask for help, to ask for advice, and to give advice. It can be a special skill that a person can learn in a support group. And being in a support group reduces stress and reduces depression by mere sharing, and sometimes by just listening to others share. It increases self-knowledge and self-understanding. Others who are in the group with you are like your mirror. As this one person shares this, and person B shares something, person C shares something, and so on, you see snippets of yourself in these people, in all of them, snippets of them, and that increases your own self-understanding. And when you've got that self-understanding, you can manage your disease even better, or your condition even better. It also, support groups also help you understand the knowledge of the disease. This is extremely important for people to know exactly what goes on, what triggers are there, what coping strategies are there, genetic components of this disease, and you know, everything that goes with the disease need to be known, and then it helps. As we all know, that knowledge is power. Well, another benefit of joining a support group is that it offers a member, any member, an opportunity to help others. Remember, in a support group, everyone is equal, everyone is respected, so everyone has an opportunity of helping others. And as you help others, you learn to be kind, you learn to be caring, and this learning increases your self-esteem. And self-esteem is one of those things that gets broken or damaged when a person is abusing substances. And you get respect, you gain respect, which increases your own self-respect, own self-worth, as you realize that you are being listened to, and you are not just listened to, you are listened to in an air of acceptance. And there is healing in helping and giving to others. Just mere helping others will increase your chances of recovery, because you know there is healing there. And you also realize how much you have learned and grown as you learn support and impart wisdom to others. Take a person who's recovering on their own at home. They might know how much they are growing or how much they've grown. And even if there was any growth, compared to a person's support, it will be significantly lesser than a person who is in a support group. And where there is denial in a support group, it is addressed immediately. That's one thing I like about support groups. They are honest. They want the best for you. They want growth for everybody. So they will address your denial. And therefore, by addressing the denial, a relapse is averted. It also improves thinking patterns. And you learn to manage emotions when you're in a group setting. Interpersonal skills are also improved. A person learns to communicate better. They learn to empathize. They learn boundaries, when to be involved and when to just not be involved, and how much to be involved. The group also offer practical advice on how to cope and help on related issues. Practical advice, professionals sometimes miss that one. We've got to be honest, but people who've walked the journey will give you exactly what you need for exactly specific things. And the support groups are guest speakers who are invited to talk, to address the participants or members of the support group on expert information of any topic that is related to their condition. So this is one big benefit, because a person who's at home might not get this information, but now that they are attending a support group, they get to benefit from the expert information they are given. And another thing that's important is that people only speak when they are ready, when they have the needs to talk. There is no coercion. And you are free to take a trusted person, a trusted loved one to a group with you. And this is provided, this open group, as Dr. Saunders mentioned earlier. There are closed groups and open groups. And if it's an open group, you are free to bring a trusted person for moral support. They also help you to become accountable. You account. There are set goals, there are set targets, there are set homework assignments that you are given. And when you come to a group, you should be able to report. And if you are accountable, your sense of responsibility and self-responsibility increases. So overall, you become a better person in a group. A group is a constant reminder of why you joined it. I mentioned it earlier. And it makes you feel less depressed and less isolated. And the depression and the isolation often happens because of the condition itself. You know, you are having a condition and living among people who are healthy. It might depress you. It might make you feel less worthy and so on. So being in a group is really helpful. And then in conclusion, I'd like to mention that there's nothing to lose when you're joining a support group, nothing at all. There's so much to gain, in fact. And where there are broken relationships at home, or with your loved ones, with your bosses, or with whoever is important, significant other people in your life, when you attend a support group, the relationships are rebuilt easier, because now the families are assured, or the significant others are assured, that you are committed to a new lifestyle, you're committed to a healthy lifestyle or recovery. It's a sign of commitment that this one is serious about their recovery. The support groups are effective at reducing hospitalization. And if you reduce hospitalization, you also reduce the expenses on the family and the overcrowding and so on at facilities. And it also helps with symptom management. When people learn how to deal with their triggers and so on, they recognize them and they can deal with them effectively. If they recognize them, they know what that means, and they're getting advice from others. And therefore, it also reduces relapse. the chances of a relapse. And it is these relapses that eventually break a person down. When a person relapses often, sometimes they lose hope altogether. We don't want anybody to come to that point of losing hope. So let them get a support group as soon as their first treatment, or or as soon as their first relapse, or as soon as possible, basically. And once again, I must say, the support group is a bridge between the healthcare professionals and the family and the person's emotional needs. The emotional needs may not be met by the professional team, and it may not be met by the family, because these are unique emotions that belong only to people who are suffering consequences of an addiction. So the support group will provide that emotional support. And so that's it from me, Sister Connie. Any questions? Oh, no, I'm done.
Thank you so much, Sister Peggy. That was very insightful. Thank you for making everything so clear to us. So I just want to know if there are any questions and answers. You can unmute you or put up your hand, or you can put it in the chat. Now, we also had training with the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. So we did training with them on support groups, and SADC, as it's known, they are prepared to help us with support groups, even if we are not SADC support groups. Now, in order for you to fall under the SADC umbrella, you must have no religious affiliation, kind of. So it mustn't be a religious group, right? And also, they don't do support groups for children. And the other third thing they have is that people who run support groups do not get paid. So that's one of the things they have, but they're more than willing to help us if we do not have SADC support groups. They are still willing to help, but they're just not going to list us in their registry or whatever. They're not going to refer, they'll refer people to us, but they won't list us under the SADC umbrella, but they're still willing to help. And we've got lots of resources on support groups that they gave us that we also got from the SAU. So if you want, please let us know. And before you start the support group, please attend a support group first. One has to be committed to doing this. It's people's emotions that and their lives. Like, let's say, for example, it's for depression, or it's for anxiety, it's for an eating disorder. It is, you can have support groups for bereavement, with so many people being ill and dying from COVID, and with so many people being ill as a result of COVID. We have lots of COVID-19 long haulers, as they are called. Now, there is a support group on Facebook. Let's say you want to start a support group for COVID-19 long haulers in your church, for example, in your community. Identify what the needs are in the community. It's no use starting a support group that is totally irrelevant to that community. And it's nice to have support groups, let's say at churches or at places where we can reach out to people, where we as churches can become relevant to our communities. Sipiwe, please go ahead. I see your hand is up.
Thank you again, Connie, for your support. You always want to put us abreast of what is happening regarding mental illness and support group. I just want to know, are we going to have the recordings? Because we could not take notes quickly.
Yes, we are recording. We also then have it edited, and we have it uploaded on the Family Ministries YouTube channel. Now, there are lots of things on the Family YouTube channel. So go do yourself a favor, go to the Northern Conference Family Ministries YouTube channel and go and have a look at what we have. You can do the same for the Northern Conference Health Ministries YouTube channel. Go and have a look. And we are waiting for more questions and answers. And while we are waiting, You cannot afford to miss Monday to Thursday, where for family ministries, we are going to be having a week of prayer, which will be done by Pastor. You see how I can see he's a doctor already. How we're going to have Pastor Mandla Lupondwana. He's going to do our week of prayer from Monday to Thursday at 6:30. We don't want to start it too late. It's an hour. So please join if you are able to. You will really be blessed by it. I'll send it out tomorrow. And I don't want to send out too many things on top of each other. Then we get confused and we don't join anything. So tomorrow evening, 6:30, I'm going to send the information. Okay. Are there any other
Thank you.
questions? A pleasure, my sister. Please can you put up your hand or unmute yourself if you have any other questions. And I would like to thank everyone for joining. We've got people joining from Namibia, all over. I'm so happy. It's my family, by the way. So I'm very happy that they are joining. And my good friend Nadine Naidu, she's joining us. And then I see Pastor Silas is also. Thank you, Pastor. Any other questions? Please unmute yourselves and or raise your hand and feel free to ask. Now, okay, there's a question in there. What platforms are there for support groups? Okay, so you can decide. There are WhatsApp support groups, there are Zoom support groups, and we can have support groups in person now again because we are on level 1. I do suggest that if you've never been in a support group, start with a face-to-face support group before you transition to a WhatsApp support group or to a Zoom. Also, you want to get to know people, you want to learn to trust each other, but there's lots of resources on that, and SADC again can help with that if you want to do that. Please let me know if you want the resources. It's really very easy, it's simple. And remember, in a support group, you don't have to know everything. You're not a therapist, okay? So it's not a therapy session, it's a support group session. Everyone is in the same boat, as Dr. Saunders and Sister Peggy said. You're not the guy that's gonna give you're not gonna solve the problems. You are in the same boat, you can relate to one another, but no one is going to expect of the support group leader to know everything and to speak the most. That's not going to happen. In support groups, it's not like that. Everyone is equal. That's why they say inner circle, always in a circle. So you'll sit in a circle so that everyone is equal and everyone has equal airtime. So I hope Horatilwe, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself if I didn't answer the question. But yeah, those are the platforms that we have currently. You know, COVID allowed us to change things in so many ways, and that's why they're having support groups on Zoom and on WhatsApp and all of that. Yeah. Any other? Dr. Saunders, anything else you would like to add, maybe from your side?
Thanks, Connie. You know, I just think that at this point in time, having been enlightened as a church, it's imperative that we start supporting each other, because we sit there and we suffer in silence, not realizing that my brother next to me, my sister next to me, has the same problem that I do. And the more we open up and support each other and help each other, the more we're going to grow. And I've also come across in my reading that a burden shared is a burden halved. And so we can carry each other's burdens, because the Bible teaches us to carry each other's burdens and to be there for each other. And so I think the time has come that we can just start in at the deep end. You don't know where, how, where, when you're going to save someone's life. You know, I was actually saddened when a church group told me, no, we don't have to help them financially now. We'll help them when they need it at their funeral. we contribute to their funeral. But then I thought, but this is so laughable, Why want to contribute to someone's funeral when you can help them right now in their time of need? So I think the time is now that we need to help each other, support each other, because mental health is a big thing nowadays. And not because it's only been discovered now, but because people are opening up so much more, and people are putting it out there. And suicide is real. People die silently, and we can avert that. We can avoid that by supporting each other and reaching out for each other. And like I constantly say, by getting down into that deep, dark hole with each other and showing each other the way out, because I've climbed out, so I can show you the way out.
And I think very often we make the mistake that we want to give the impression that we're perfect. We don't suffer. We don't, it's not like that. In reality, it's not like that. We all have our own issues. It's just some of us can hide it so much better than others, and we don't have to. We can help one another, and no one has to suffer with depression if we are relevant in our homes, in our churches, in our communities. But people suffer with depression because they don't know where to go. 1 in 6 South Africans suffer with depression. SADC says 1 in 3 now during this time would have suffered a depressive episode. So, we can make a difference, not only with the skills, but as Christians, with God's word. Isn't that amazing hope that we can provide people with? It doesn't mean because we have the Bible we're perfect. Quite the contrary. We're so in need of God's grace. We're so in need of him. That's why Renee says, 1 Peter 4 verse 8, above all things, have fervent charity among yourselves. Thanks, Renee. That is so true. So if there are no other questions or no other contributions, Dr. Saunders, thank you so much for sharing with us. And to those who missed Dr. Saunders' presentation, it has been recorded. We will make it available on YouTube. Sister Peggy, thank you very much. If you want the SADC resources and the other resources, you are free to contact us. The book that Dr. Saunders alluded to, Steps to Christ Recovery Edition, we do have the book at the office. And then we want to thank you once again. We don't want to waste people's time. Otherwise, you just not don't join again if we take too long. Okay. So come tomorrow night for the family ministries. And we want to ask Sister Estelle Baker is Women's Ministry and Children's Ministries Director. Thank you for joining, Sister Estelle. And I have asked if she could please close for us in prayer. Thanks.
Sure, let us pray. Thank you very much, Connie, for arranging. Very insightful. Let's pray. Almighty God, we are so thankful that this evening we have been challenged and have been listening and being enlightened to know how we can be there to support others. Father, you have built us and made us as social beings, and we've realized that by joining and starting support groups, that indeed we can be that support to one another. Father, I pray that in our minds and in our understanding, you will remove whatever biases we may have regarding support groups, that you will just give us open minds to be receptive, to understand that it is there to support one another and nothing else. May we be the example that you set, Lord, the compassionate and caring person that you were while you walked this earth. May we too reflect that, so that we can indeed be each other's keepers. Strengthen us in our walk with you, dear God, so that we can be authentic when we undertake these interactions, so that we can represent you in all we do. And ultimately, that it may be to the honor and the glory of your holy name alone. For Christ's sake, amen.